Hey guys, tonight, we're heading back in time to a place where the air is thick with smoke, the walls drip with sweat, and the only alarm clock is the sound of metal screaming beneath a hammer. You're about to spend a day in the blistered, bone-weary skin of a medieval blacksmith. You feel the heat before your eyes even open. It clings to you, suffocating thick with the scent of charcoal old leather and something that might be you. You slept in your workshop again, no surprise there. It's not like your home and your forge are separate spaces. You roll off the itchy straw mattress, scratch at the flea bites on your leg, and accidentally knock over a rusted tin cup that once held water, now just sediment and regret. The sky outside hasn't even started to pale. But you're already late. The coals need stoking, the bellows need pumping, and your apprentice, if he didn't run off in the night again, needs yelling at. You trudge over to the forge, your feet crunching on old ash and scorched wood chips. The coals are cold. You groan. Time to revive the heart of your tiny empire, the furnace. You strike a flint with shivering fingers. Sparks spit. The dry twigs you keep in a leather pouch catch, and you carefully feed the flame, whispering to it like an anxious parent. Slowly, grudgingly, the forge breathes again. The first gust of heat is both a blessing and a curse. You warm up, sure, but also instantly start sweating through your already stained tunic. This is just the beginning. The real fun starts when you start swinging that hammer for the next 14 hours. Now, don't get too excited. You're not just making swords all day. Sure, once in a while you get to fashion something vaguely cool for the local lord. But mostly nails, hinges, horseshoes, hoops for buckets. The thrilling life of the indispensable yet underappreciated. And it stinks. Oh, does it stink? Every breath is a blend of scorched metal, burnt wool, and something that smells suspiciously like expired goat cheese. That's just you, though. Hygiene, you'll find, is not really a blacksmith's strong suit, or the medieval era's for that matter. You try washing sometimes. Really you do. But water has to be fetched in buckets from the well heated over a fire, and there's a good chance someone already used it to clean fish guts. Besides, every attempt at cleanliness is undone within minutes of lighting the forge again. Your hands are cracked and stained black. Your nails are caked with grime that no amount of scrubbing can remove. Your hair has become its own species, and it's probably unionized. And yet people need you. You are in your own sooty way essential. Farmers need plowshares. Soldiers need arrowheads. Housewives need pots repaired. In a world where metal is the skeleton of survival, you are the one banging the bones together. Still, that doesn't make you glamorous. You're not strolling through castle gardens or eating swan pie. You're inhaling iron dust and squinting through smoke so thick you can barely see your apprentice, who is currently sweeping with a broken broom and singing off-key. You make a mental note to dock his non-existent wages. Now and then someone walks past and waves a baker, maybe, or a weaver. They nod respectfully but don't come too close. Can't blame them. You smell like boiled leather and regret. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths were considered high-status artisans or just grimy laborers who happened to be useful. The truth, like most things in medieval life, is probably somewhere in the miserable middle. One thing's for sure, you're not lounging. You don't get rest days unless it's a holy feast, and even then someone's ox will probably throw a shoe halfway through Mass, and guess who they'll come crying to? That's right. You. The sun finally creeps over the horizon, a dim orange through the smoke-streaked window. Another day has officially begun, though for you. It started hours ago. You take a swig of what passes for ale, lukewarm flat, and with a hint of mystery, herb, possibly moss, and stretch your back, which pops in 3 different places. That's just the warm-up. Time to hammer out a dozen iron hooks for the tanner, fix the brewer's cracked kettle, and if you're lucky, finish the fancy gate hinge for the monastery. All while dodging sparks, sweat, and splinters of flying slag. Who needs dragons when your job is this dangerous? And just as you're settling into the rhythm of the first strike, there it is, the sound that haunts your dreams. A loud, high-pitched whine from your apprentice as he drops an ingot on his foot. Again. You sigh, deeply. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. Maybe you're lying in bed at 11 p.m., or maybe it's 3 a.m., and you're wondering why you're still awake. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pick up the hammer. The first clang echoes through your bones, like a bell calling you to battle. Welcome to your day, your long, hot, exhausting day. Your muscles are already protesting and the sun has barely yawned over the rooftops. You hoist the iron bar with a grunt. It's heavier than it looks, and your shoulder remembers every single swing from yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that. You know that saying, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, you don't love it, and you work every single day. Your hammer hits the glowing metal with a clang that rattles your teeth. Over and over you strike. The anvil sings like some tone-deaf church bell, and your hands quickly lose feeling, replaced with that familiar buzz of bone-on-iron contact. The bar bends, flattens curls under your blows. Not quite right. Back into the fire it goes. The forge hisses. Flames leap, casting everything in the workshop in flickering amber. Your skin glistens with sweat again. It's a wet heat, clinging and cruel. You'd think you'd be used to it by now, but no. Every morning is a fresh reminder that you live in a furnace. Your apprentice, let's call him Giles, because of course it's Giles, has finally stopped complaining about his foot and is now very earnestly hammering a square nail into a round hole. You sigh and resist the urge to throw a ladle at him. Progress. There's something almost hypnotic about the work. Hammer, flip, strike again. It's loud, it's brutal, but there's a rhythm to it, a pulse. You wonder if this is how monks feel when they chant mindless repetition soothing the chaos. Except instead of Gregorian melodies, you get hot metal and the occasional burn blister. Speaking of blisters, you lost count years ago. Your hands look like they've been attacked by squirrels, then set on fire. The calluses are so thick, you could probably pick up hot coals without flinching. Probably. You pause for a sip of water, which tastes faintly of tin and backwash. Giles offers you a hunk of bread. You break it open, still warm, shockingly, and find a beetle. You pluck it out with all the grace of a man who's done this more times than he can count. Toss it aside and chew. Crunchy. Not from the bread. It's not glamorous, but it's life. And in some twisted way, you're proud of it. Because every nail you forge, every hinge you shape, it matters. Somewhere out there, someone's house won't fall apart today because of your work. A village boy darts in barefoot, breathless, holding a broken pitchfork like it's a sword. "Mr. Smith, Mr. Smith," he gasps. "Father says to fix it before the harvest." You take the pitchfork, examine the damage. Shoddy wood, twisted prongs probably used to poke more than hay. You nod and tell the boy it'll be ready by dusk. He smiles like you've just given him a crown, tosses you a bruised apple, and runs out. You stare at the apple. It's got a bite in it already. You shrug. Free food is free food. This is your life. You're the fixer, the reforger, the man everyone turns to when things fall apart. You don't get medals or songs or tapestries, but you get nods of respect. You get the occasional loaf of bread. And once, just once, you got a warm goose feather in winter. Luxury. Mainstream history remembers the knights, the kings, the explorers. Rarely the men behind the sword blades and gate hinges. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths were seen as noble craftsmen or just necessary background noise. But here in the heart of the village, your anvil is the heartbeat. And then because the universe has a sense of humor, your hammer handle cracks. Mid-swing, you lurch forward, narrowly missing your thumb and your pride. Giles looks up wide-eyed. You curse under your breath, something mild. Like saints, preserve me, then rummage through the corner where you keep spare handles. There are none. You eye the old broom, could be reforged into a makeshift handle. Again, as you tinker with repairs, you hear hooves outside clattering against the stone. A knight. Probably. Or a tax collector. Either way, not good. Sure enough, the door creaks open, and in walks a man in partial armor chainmail, jingling like festive bells. He's sweating worse than you. Need 24 arrowheads. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. You try to protest, but his glare silences you faster than boiling oil. He tosses a silver coin on your bench. You haven't seen silver in weeks. It's dented, probably fake, but it gleams like hope. You nod. Tomorrow. He leaves. Giles whispers, "But master, the harvest tools." You groan. "I know, Giles, I know." The hammer slips in your hand. Your muscles ache. Your knees scream every time you shift your stance. And yet you lift the metal bar again. Because there's no one else to do it. And because no one survives a medieval village without a good blacksmith. Or at least one who can bluff his way through deadlines. You've got arrowheads to make, a pitchfork to repair, a broom to decapitate and reforge, and at least 3 more burns waiting for you before supper. Better keep swinging. The heat never really lets up. Not even when the sun is high and every other sane soul has ducked into shade. You're still standing over the forge, wiping sweat with the same rag you use to clean metal filings off your tools. It's crunchy. You're not asking why. The fire crackles angrily, like it resents being fed again so soon. You pump the bellows with one hand while turning a horseshoe with the other. Multitasking is a survival skill, not a choice. If you stop for a second, the fire dies. If the fire dies, so does your livelihood. You live in the hot zone, literally. Your workshop is your house, or rather, your house is a workshop with a bed in it. 1 room, forge in the corner, sleeping mat by the door, a battered chest for your clothes, which consist of 2 tunics, one filthy, the other filthier. The walls are stained black from smoke. The ceiling has soot hanging like cobwebs, and the window, it's more of a hole. At night it lets in cool air and curious insects. During storms, it lets in rain and the occasional concerned frog. There's no real separation between life and work. Your meals cook beside your tools. Your kids, if you have any, learn to crawl between iron scraps and buckets of nails. Your spouse complains about the smell. But let's be honest. You can't tell if that's coming from you or the boiled cabbage stew congealing on the hearth. The floor is a mixture of dirt, soot, and something that once may have been bread. You sweep it with a twig bundle tied with string, which somehow makes it worse. You've stopped trying. Outside the village clucks along. Literally. Chickens roam freely occasionally, strutting into your forge and clucking at you like disappointed customers. One even laid an egg in your coal bin once. You cooked it on the anvil. Desperate times. The problem with living next to your forge isn't just the heat. It's the constant, unrelenting presence of work. There is no escape, no off hours. If something breaks, they knock on your door. If they need something shaped, filed, bent, or fixed, they shout through your window hole, even at night. Especially at night. You remember that one time, a full moon, quiet evening, your legs finally resting when a desperate farmer came knocking. His wife's cooking pot had split. Dinner was half cooked. Couldn't wait. You patched it with a strip of scrap and a whole lot of grumbling. He paid you in carrots. One of them bit you back. You don't even get to dream of luxury. Castles. You might make parts for one, But you sleep on straw that pokes you in places you didn't know existed, surrounded by the low glow of coals and the occasional spider dangling from the rafters like it owns the place. Historians still debate whether blacksmiths intentionally chose to live above their shops or were forced into it by necessity. Either way, it's not romantic. It's exhausting and dangerous. Always dangerous. You sleep with one ear open, listening for crackles, pops, or the dreaded silence of a dying fire. A cold forge isn't just inconvenient. It could ruin your materials, delay a noble's order, or cost you everything if you can't relight it. Sometimes just to keep it burning, you crawl from bed at midnight and toss in more fuel-scrap wood-old shoes, once even your cousin's poetry scrolls. You didn't feel bad. The rhymes were terrible. The fire is more than just your tool. It's a roommate, an unruly beast you must feed tame and obey. And unlike people, fire never forgets when you've been careless. There was a boy once apprenticed to the smith in the next village over, left the coals unattended. The whole place went up. Barn shop, even the tavern next door. Folks are still mad, not at the boy, at the wasted ale. So you're cautious, obsessively so. You tie your sleeves, you oil your tools. You keep a bucket of sand close and a rabbit's foot in your pocket, not for luck, just because it makes a better conversation starter than I haven't slept in 2 days. And yet, despite the stress, the mess, and the heat rash you're not discussing, you press on. Because this is what you do. What your father did. What his father did. Somewhere down the soot-streaked bloodline, someone decided banging on hot metal all day was a family tradition. You've tried to teach Giles the same pride. He's not quite there yet. He still flinches when sparks fly and once tried to cool iron by spitting on it. You keep him around anyway. He's better than nothing, and he's the only one short enough to reach the tongs when they fall behind the forge. This life, if nothing else, builds endurance. You don't think in days or weeks. You think in orders. Filled fires, tended meals scrounged. You forget birthdays, but you remember every axe head you've ever crafted, because you had to re-grind most of them after the noble's idiot cousin tested them on a rock. You pause only briefly as the sun hits its peak. Sweat drips from your brow into your eye, and you blink through the sting. Giles offers you a crust of bread dipped in something that might be broth. You eat. There's something crunchy inside. You don't ask. Then back to work. The fire needs feeding. A wagon axle is due by tomorrow. And the village bell just rang, which means someone else is coming, probably with a bent sword and an urgent timeline. You live in the hot zone. You are the hot zone. The knock at your door isn't even surprising anymore. It's barely past midday, and already you've fixed a scythe, hammered out 10 rivets, and reattached a wheel rim that was so warped it looked like someone had run it over with a dragon. You wipe your hands, mostly just smearing soot from one part of your tunic to another, and open the door. It's old man Bert. He's holding out a broken latch like it's the crown jewels. Couldn't pay last time he wheezes, but I've got fresh turnips now. Good ones, still got dirt on 'em. You nod and let him in. The latch is rusted bent and smells faintly of goat. You take it without complaint. Because here, in this charred little corner of the world, this is how business works. You get paid in chickens, or eggs, or turnips, or 3 nearly matching buttons and a cracked flute. Money coins, that's for merchants and tax collectors, and people who don't go to bed with coal dust in their teeth. This isn't just barter. It's barter's weird cousin. Half your transactions aren't even for things they're promises. A future loaf of bread, a guaranteed discount on firewood, or famously, a piglet that never actually existed. Still waiting on that one. You don't bother keeping records anymore. You just remember. Or try to. There was a week once when 3 people claimed they'd paid you with the same sack of barley. You took it from all 3. Then fed it to a goat. Justice. The economic structure here isn't broken. It was never built. If someone has nothing, they offer work. Sometimes they offer gossip, or beer, or an hour's help watching your forge while you cough up soot behind the shed. That counts too. One time a bard needed a new tuning peg for his lute. You forged it out of an old nail and a fishhook. He paid you in songs, not good ones, but he swore he'd immortalize you in a ballad. You never heard it. You're 90% sure it rhymed blacksmith with back itch. Historians still argue whether medieval blacksmiths operated mostly on barter or used local coinage. Truth is, it depended on the village, the decade, and how desperate everyone felt during that particular harvest. You glance at the growing pile of payments in the corner, wilted herbs, a jar of questionable jam, a single leather glove, and a figurine shaped like a duck. You don't even want to know what that last one was traded for, and yet you make it work. You have to. You've become something between a craftsman and a community vault. If someone's in need, you help. Not out of charity, though. Fine, you're not a monster. But because next time you need help, they'll show up. You remember last winter? Harsh, freezing. The firewood ran out and the coals burned low. You were close to shutting down, maybe for good. Then the village came. One by one. They brought peat bricks, scraps of coal, even old furniture to burn. No one said a word. They just nodded, dropped their offerings, and left. It wasn't payment. It was survival. That's the economy here. You step back into your forge and toss the latch into a bucket for later. There's a knock at the back entrance this time. Giles opens it, and in walks the midwife with a cracked kettle. You don't ask. You just add it to the growing queue. Outside you hear laughter, children playing. Somewhere, someone singing about sheep. The absurdity of it all hits you for a second. You bend metal for a living. You trade hinges for goat cheese. Your best customer once tried to pay you in the future blessings of St. Odo. You kind of respect it. Still, the strain shows. Every deal is a gamble. Will the eggs be fresh? Will the promised wool arrive next week or next season? You once traded a dozen nails for half a jug of cider and got food poisoning and a hangover. Impressive, really. But sometimes, rarely, it goes the other way. Like the time you repaired a noble's hunting spear and he actually paid in coin. Real silver. Enough to buy yourself new gloves, 3 loaves of bread, and a small wooden statue of a saint who coincidentally now guards your hearth. Badly carved, slightly crooked, but protective in spirit. And let's not forget the time a traveling merchant passed through. Needed a quick fix for a broken wagon axle. You did it in a panic covered in soot, shirt half on. He gave you a whole smoked ham and a jug of spiced wine. You remember that night vividly, mostly because you don't remember the second half of it. Modern folks complain about slow internet or bad coffee. You wish they could spend 1 hour in your boots, barefoot, blistered, and trying to figure out if you should accept 3 cabbages in exchange for an hour of forge time. Sometimes you daydream about coin, gold, a purse that jingles when you walk. But then you remember gold doesn't feed chickens, and it definitely can't patch a kettle. So you go back to your barter, your bruised economy of favors, and foraged payment. Besides, in this world, trust is currency. And despite the chaos, the weird trades, and the occasional goat inside your forge, people trust you. They need you. And in a way, that's worth more than coin. Though a little coin wouldn't hurt. It's funny in a not funny at all kind of way how often you make things you'll never get to use. Take today, for example. You've just spent 3 hours crafting a pair of ornate iron spurs for the local baron. They're elegant, precise, and sharp enough to slice bread. Not that you'd waste bread like that. They'll be worn twice, maybe 3 times. Then tossed into a chest, or lost in the mud during some dramatic departure on horseback. Meanwhile, your own sandals are held together with twine, and hope the soles so thin you can feel each pebble like a personal insult. Shoes for kings, scraps for you. You glance down at your feet, dusty, blistered with a fresh burn near the ankle from where a stray coal got a little too friendly. Your tunic has a tear under the arm. Your belt is technically just a long piece of rope. And you're wearing socks you borrowed from your cousin 3 winters ago. He hasn't missed them, probably because he died of chilblains. But the spurs, beautiful. A masterpiece. You even etched a little scrollwork along the edge. Will anyone notice? Probably not. Still, it matters. Your name might not be sung in ballads, but your handiwork endures at least until some idiot drops it in a puddle. You have to laugh, because if you don't, you'll cry, and the tears would only steam right off your cheeks in this furnace you call a home. Today's noble request also includes 2 decorative hinges for the chapel door. They're shaped like vines with curling leaves that require maddening precision. The priest asked for them personally. You suspect he's trying to out-decorate the next parish over. Holy competition is still competition. You bend the metal slowly, carefully. One wrong flick of the wrist, and it's scrap. Again. And scrap means more wasted coal, more wasted time, and another meal of boiled lentils flavored with garlic dreams. You remember the last time you made something for a noble, a ceremonial dagger. Gorgeous thing. You spent 2 full days sanding the blade until it gleamed like water under moonlight. Gave it a handle inlaid with bone, probably cow, possibly Uncle Kidding. Mostly. The noble took one look and said, bit dull, bit dull. You almost threw it at him. Almost. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths in rural areas ever managed upward mobility through craftsmanship alone. Spoiler alert, no. You're here in this exact spot, not because you failed, but because there's no ladder out of this soot-soaked trench. Even when you craft something worthy of kings, you remain a servant. Maybe a respected one on good days, but always at the mercy of someone wealthier, taller, and wearing significantly nicer shoes. It's not all misery, though. There's a strange, stubborn pride in what you do. That sword the squire just swaggered by with yours. That gate that creaks every time the wind changes yours. The lantern hook outside the bakery that's only slightly off-center because you sneezed while hammering still yours. You make things that last, things that matter. It's just that none of them belong to you. And if you ever do make something for yourself, it's with leftover bits. A dented cup, a fork with 3 tines, a belt buckle that used to be a hinge, your bed frame, 2 horseshoes, 4 wagon spokes, and a prayer. Your one indulgence is a small iron ring you forged during a slow season. It doesn't fit any of your fingers properly, but it lives on a leather cord around your neck. A reminder of what you're not entirely sure. Maybe that you still exist under all the ash and obligation. Giles interrupts your thought spiral by dropping a bucket of water. Again. You shoot him a look so sharp it could slice iron. He's sweating buckets bright red trying to cool the tongs too fast, and nearly taking his own foot off in the process. You mutter something about Saint Eligius, the patron saint of metal workers, and how he probably drank less and dropped fewer things. Giles doesn't get the joke. You weren't joking. Still, you finish the hinges before dusk. And they're good. Better than good. They're the kind of thing you'd take a picture of if pictures existed. Instead, you just nod to yourself and set them aside ready for delivery tomorrow. You grab a scrap heel from the pile, an old shoe that's nearly disintegrated, and place it gently over the flame. You're going to try again to cobble something together for your foot before the winter chill sets in. The sole splits the moment you pick it up. You sigh. You make swords for men who will never use them. Shields for knights who want to look important. Tools for farmers who pay you in stale cheese. And for yourself, you get sandals that last half a season and dreams that crumble faster than old iron. But still you make. Every day. Because someone has to. And if your sandals fall apart, well, that's what twine is for. Lunch, if you can call it. That is a bowl of something vaguely resembling stew. It's thin brown, and has exactly one visible bean floating in it, like a sad island. You slurp it anyway, sitting on an upturned bucket, your back against the forge wall. The heat never goes away. Even here in the corner, where the shadows pool and the smoke's a bit thinner, your skin prickles constantly. You wipe your face with your sleeve. The sleeve is wetter than your face. That's concerning. Probably stew, hopefully. The blacksmith diet is a tragedy in 3 acts. Too much bread, not enough meat, and more grit than seasoning. Most days, your meals are scavenged or traded charred crusts from the baker's rejects, limp greens from the apothecary's garden, the occasional salty cheese that smells like regret. But when the stars align and someone pays you in actual food, oh, it's a feast. You remember that one time someone brought you half a roast chicken, cold, greasy, covered in lint. You still dream about it. Today is not that day. Today is stew. And stew is mostly water with ambition. Giles is gnawing on something he calls bread. You're not convinced. It looks like a rock and sounds like one too when he drops it. He offers you a piece. You decline politely and watch as he dips it in the stew, then accidentally knocks over the bowl. Lunch is canceled. You stretch your legs. Bad idea. Your knees sound like rusted hinges, and your hips crack like you've been pickled in vinegar. You haven't sat down properly in days. The closest thing to a break is standing less. You reach for your drinking water, lukewarm, slightly cloudy, and housed in a flask made from an old horn. It smells vaguely of onions, possibly from the stew, possibly from the water. You've stopped asking questions. Historians have uncovered a wide variety of medieval diets, especially depending on class. Nobles got the good stuff, venison capons, spices from far-off lands. You meanwhile eat what's available, what's boiled, and what hasn't crawled away yet. And let's not forget the seasonal panic. Winter is coming, time to dry every root vegetable you own, hoard questionable jerky, and hope your neighbor's chickens start laying out of sheer pity. When you're lucky, someone pays you with beans or onions. The beans are fine. The onions you have mixed feelings about, given how often they end up in your eyes or in weird pouches people wear under their arms to ward off illness. They don't, but they do ward off conversation. Then there's the bread. Ah, bread, the great medieval mystery. Sometimes it's a hearty loaf, dense and satisfying. More often it's a floury brick with the texture of gravel and the flavor of regret. You eat it anyway because calories are calories, and you've got iron to move. One of the strangest trades you ever made was for a bag of spice. Turned out to be dried moss. You put it in stew anyway. Tasted like disappointment. Looked pretty, though. You often find yourself eyeing your own food skeptically. The stew simmers again, the single bean orbiting like a lonely planet. You poke it with a stick. It resists. You consider naming it. Giles, for all his youthful optimism and culinary blindness, once tried to enhance a meal by adding bits of boiled leather. For chewiness, he said. You nodded slowly, then threw the pot out the window. Occasionally, when desperate, you gnaw on bones you've already used in the fire to stir coals. You call it flavor archaeology. No one laughs. You still think it's clever. There's an old superstition in the village that blacksmiths shouldn't eat near the forge, it spoils the fire. But if you didn't eat near the forge, you wouldn't eat at all. So apologies to whatever flame spirit you just offended. You take one last sip of broth, cough once, and get up. Your spine audibly protests. You thank it for its feedback and move on. Your stomach growls, offended by the lack of actual food. You mutter a promise about dinner. It doesn't believe you. Dinner will probably be stew again. Different stew. Slightly thicker water. 2 beans if you're lucky. Maybe a piece of beet. And the same bread rock that Giles has now decided to use as a paperweight for your charcoal scraps. But the worst part? The water. Always the water. Clean water is a myth. The village well is shared by 30 families, 4 goats, and something that might be a witch. Everyone draws from it, everyone dumps stuff near it, and yet somehow everyone is surprised when people get sick. You boil your water when you can. When you can't, you drink fast and pray harder. Giles insists that adding crushed mint makes it taste better. It doesn't. It just tastes like mint-flavored regret. You once traded a set of nails for a pitcher of cider. It was sweet fizzy and possibly hallucinogenic. You loved it. You woke up in a ditch 3 hours later with an egg in your pocket and no memory of where it came from. Best afternoon of the season. Food is survival, not pleasure. You eat because you must. You drink because you need to. And on very rare days when someone brings by a wedge of real cheese or a hunk of honeycomb, you savor it like royalty. For 5 minutes. Then it's gone, and you're back to bean stew and gravel bread. The forge waits. You take a deep breath, wipe your hands again, same result, and pick up your hammer. Lunch break is over. Not that you ever really stopped working. You swing the hammer again this time, shaping the blade of a short utility knife for the tanner down the road. The blade glows orange at the edge and hisses as you plunge it into water. Steam rushes up in a choking cloud, carrying the familiar scent of boiled metal and probably some bug you didn't see in the bucket. As it clears, you cough. Again. Not the polite kind. The deep, rattly kind that starts somewhere in your ribs and scrapes its way out like it's dragging a plow. You taste ash, or soot, or yesterday's stew, possibly all 3. This is normal. You've been coughing like this for years. It's just part of the job. You wipe your nose with a soot-blackened sleeve and move on, because in this line of work, breathing is optional. How to inhale a career lesson. 1. Be a blacksmith. The forge, your eternal partner, is both the creator and the destroyer. It gives life to your craft and slowly takes yours in return. Every breath you take carries tiny metal particles, charcoal dust, smoke, and God knows what from the rusted nails Giles sometimes throws in for practice. There's no ventilation, of course, no chimney. Just a hole in the roof that does its best until it rains, and then everything inside smells like wet anvil for days. Historians still debate the long-term health effects on medieval smiths, though some accounts suggest they often died younger than farmers, and even soldiers, not from battle, but from breathing in their own livelihood. Your lungs aren't so much organs anymore, as they are filters that forgot their job centuries ago. You've tried to dampen the smoke, doused the coals, lightly opened both doors, waved a cloak at the window. It just makes the fire mad and the smoke clingier, like a ghost with abandonment issues. And then there are the metals. Oh, the metals. Lead, tin, arsenic-laced alloys from older scraps. Nothing screams wholesome career like inhaling a little alchemy with every exhale. You once melted down an old goblet someone swore was blessed silver. It bubbled like a potion and left a yellow-green residue on your tools for a week. You couldn't taste anything for 3 days. Giles, ever curious, licked a fleck of it and forgot how to use a spoon for a while. He got better. Mostly. There's a ringing in your ears that never really goes away. A constant faint hum, sometimes higher-pitched, sometimes lower. It's the echo of 1,000 hammer strikes trapped inside your skull, like bees in a jar, and your eyes dry red, always stinging. The forge flame stares back at you day after day, flickering like it knows something you don't. You squint so much that your face has permanent lines, not the good kind, like wisdom or mystery, but the kind that make people ask if you're in pain. You are, but mostly just tired. Your hands shake at night, sometimes in the morning too. Not from fear, not from cold, from fatigue, from metal memory, from holding too much weight too tightly for too many years. You used to think it would pass. Now you just hope it waits until after supper. The worst is when you smell burning flesh and realize it's your own. Again. You've stopped reacting to minor burns. They sting, sure, but it's the deep ones, the ones that go silent, that worry you. You still remember the time you stepped backward onto a hot horseshoe. It sizzled. You didn't scream. You just sat down. Giles fainted. You bandaged it with a bit of linen soaked in vinegar and kept working. It blistered like bread rising. But you made quota. You pause, blinking through a haze of smoke and tiredness as a wasp drifts lazily past your face. You let it go. You respect it. You're both just trying to survive the fumes. There's a bitter irony to it all. You build the tools that keep everyone else alive. Axes, plows, hinges, weapons. You make them strong. You make them last. But you yourself slowly crumbling from the inside out. And when you do get sick, there's no healer who understands your symptoms. Try leeches, they say. Or eat boiled nettles. Or maybe pray more. One time you swallowed a mixture made by the apothecary's cousin, some kind of miracle powder that promised to clear the chest. It did, along with your appetite and part of your memory. You think it was mostly crushed garlic and rat bone. Modern folks would call this occupational hazard. You just call it Tuesday. Still, you keep going. Not because you're brave or noble or particularly well compensated, but because someone needs a new horseshoe, or a cooking hook, or a dozen nails by sundown. And if you stop, they don't get them. You're the heartbeat of the village, just one that wheezes a little. You pick up the next piece, an iron ring to go around a barrel. It's simple work, satisfying. No smoke, no melting. Just shaping, bending, cooling. Giles, seeing your red eyes and gray skin, asks if you want a break. You shake your head. Breaks are for people who can afford to pause. You've got metal to inhale. You barely finish the barrel ring when the scratching at the door begins. Not a knock, a scratch, hesitant and rhythmic. You already know who it is before you open it. It's Marta, the butcher's wife, looking pale and frantic. She's holding a rusted cleaver with the handle nearly snapped in half. Behind her, a small trail of bloody footprints. Probably pig. Hopefully, pig. No one else can fix it in time, she says. Half whisper, half demand. You nod. Of course. You never say no, not really. Not unless you want half the village talking behind your back for weeks about how the smith has gotten proud. You reach out for the cleaver and notice her hands are shaking. Plague season, she mutters, eyes darting like moths in a jar. It's starting again. Ah, that's the real reason she's nervous. Not about the cleaver, about everything. Oh, look, it's plague season again. You take the blade gently and invite her to wait outside. She doesn't argue. The forge feels a little colder after that. Or maybe it's just your spine. The word plague has that effect. Every year it starts the same. Someone gets a cough. Someone else gets spots. A child dies. Then a priest. Then everyone gets religious real fast. You've been through it before. More times than you care to count. And every time it's the same cocktail of dread denial and desperate folk remedies. Sprigs of herbs tucked behind ears. Garlic necklaces. Little wax figures hung from doors. None of it works. But people keep trying. Historians still argue whether medieval plagues were bacterial, viral, or just misunderstood clusters of unrelated sickness. Frankly, you don't care. You just know that when the rats run and the healer prays louder than usual, it's time to start worrying. You finish the cleaver repair quickly, one of your cleaner welds even, and hang it from the post outside for Marta to collect. She's already gone. Left a turnip and a ribbon in her place. Inside the forge, things feel tight. Not physically, but emotionally. Like the air knows something and isn't telling. You turn back to the fire. You don't have time for sickness. You've got work. Giles shuffles over, nose red, eyes watery. You're not getting sick, are you ask. He shrugs, just the smoke, but his voice cracks, not promising. You nod slowly, then hand him a bucket. Get fresh water, from the far well. Not the village one. He blinks. That's an hour there and back. I know. You don't say the other part